Hello. Selma, Alabama. A city where the ghosts of history never sleep, where the pavement still hums with the footsteps of the marchers who crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge, some with broken bones, others with unbreakable spirits. But on this quiet Tuesday morning, history wasn't in a museum or a dusty textbook. It was about to reach out with a clenched fist. Denise Turner had just finished her grocery run, her 2-year-old son strapped in the back seat with a juice box and a stuffed rabbit named Moses. The Alabama sun spilled through the windshield of her silver Camry as she signaled right onto Claiborne Street. It was the kind of afternoon that made you believe, if only for a moment, that peace could linger, until the red and blue lights flared in her rearview. "Mommy," her son asked, blinking as the siren began to wail. "It's okay, baby," Denise said gently, already pulling to the curb. Her fingers moved instinctively, hazard lights on, hands on the wheel. Her heart tapped harder, not because she had done anything wrong, but because she knew the routine. She knew the stakes. Officer Brandon Malloy parked behind her, his cruiser still running. He didn't wait long. White, mid-40s, with a shaved head and mirrored sunglasses that reflected everything but revealed nothing, Malloy moved toward her car with a swagger that reeked of entitlement. The neighborhood knew him. Folks called him the Bull because of how he charged in, loud, fast, and without care for what he broke. Denise rolled her window down halfway. "Good afternoon, officer," she said, her voice calm. She didn't ask what was wrong. That, too, was part of the routine. "You know why I pulled you over?" Malloy asked, already irritated. "No, sir," she said. "Failure to signal properly. You turned too quickly at the intersection." His eyes flicked to the toddler in the back seat. "You in a hurry or something?" "I turned with the signal." "I can show you on the dash cam," Denise offered, a measured response. She'd done this before. Too many times. Malloy smirked. "Oh, you got evidence now? What, you one of them YouTube lawyers?" "I didn't say that, sir. I'm just trying to understand." The temperature shifted. Malloy's smirk dropped. "You getting smart with me?" "No, sir. You people always got something to say, don't you?" He snapped, stepping closer. "Always running your mouths when all you gotta do is sit there and take the damn ticket." Denise froze. She could feel it coming, the shift from annoyance to hostility. She kept her hands on the wheel, voice level. "I'm just asking why I'm being stopped. That's not illegal." Malloy's hand went to his belt. "Not the gun. Not yet. But close enough." "Step out of the car." "Officer, I don't understand." "I said step out of the car." Her son began to cry. "Please, my son is in the back seat," Denise said, trying to stay composed. "He's scared." "You should have thought about that before you started mouthing off," Malloy said, opening the driver's door himself. Denise instinctively turned to check her child. And that's when it happened. Without warning, without provocation, Sergeant Brandon Malloy's open palm lashed across Denise's face. The sound, sharp and wet, rang out like a shot. Her head snapped to the side, her lips split instantly, blood blooming like a red flower across her chin. The baby screamed. Denise fell back into her seat, stunned, her ears ringing. "Get out," Malloy barked. She could barely see, one eye already swelling. "You hit me," she whispered, stunned, disbelieving. "You hit me." "I'll do worse if you don't shut your damn mouth," he growled. "Get out." A woman across the street dropped her purse. A man walking his dog stopped cold. A cell phone went up. A camera started rolling. Denise's hand reached for her seatbelt. Her body trembled, not from fear, but from rage. From the humiliation. From the violation. She was no stranger to racism. She had marched. She had voted. She had taught her son, even as a baby, that the world would see his skin before it saw his soul. But this wasn't microaggression. This wasn't institutional. This was personal. And what Sergeant Brandon Malloy didn't know, what he couldn't see beneath the swelling eye and the bloodied mouth, was that Denise Turner wasn't just another black woman stopped on a Selma street. She was the wife of Leonard J. Turner, civil rights attorney, federal appointee, and the very man tasked with investigating officers like him. And this was not going to end quietly. The second slap came not from a hand, but from the silence that followed. After Denise Turner was struck, the world didn't stop. No alarms went off. No divine voice boomed from the heavens to say this is wrong. Instead, there was only a quiet, brutal stillness. The baby's wailing was the only sound on Claiborne Street. Sergeant Brandon Malloy stepped back, flexing the fingers of the hand that had just split her lip. His face showed no remorse, only irritation, like someone inconvenienced at a gas station pump. Denise sat frozen in the seat, tasting copper, her vision blurred by a cocktail of pain and fury. Her left cheek pulsed with heat, swelling by the second. Blood trickled down to the collar of her blouse. Her hands, still on the steering wheel, trembled. "You're under arrest for obstruction and failure to comply," Malloy muttered, reaching for his cuffs. From across the street, the voice of a witness finally broke through. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" A young man in a UPS uniform stood frozen next to his parked delivery truck, phone aimed at the scene. Next to him, an elderly black woman whispered a quiet prayer under her breath. Malloy turned. "Back off. This is a police matter." "You just hit her," the delivery man said, voice rising. "I got it on camera." "I said back off." Malloy barked again, but this time, his voice cracked slightly. He heard the word that changed everything. Recorded. More phones were out now. At least 4, maybe 5. Someone across the street shouted. "That's the lady from the center. That's Mrs. Turner." Denise, blinking back the sting in her eye, slowly turned her head. She knew that voice. Mrs. Celia Froman, director of the local church's food bank. One of the few white women who stood side by side with black organizers during the annual bridge crossing. Celia was already dialing her phone, eyes locked on Malloy with disgust. "Ambulance is on the way," she said firmly. "And so is her husband." That stopped everything. Sergeant Malloy blinked. Her husband? Denise, lips cracked but steady, spoke at last. "Leonard J. Turner." Malloy's breath hitched. That name hit like a gavel in the back of his skull. He'd heard it plenty, on the news, at town halls, whispered in the precinct locker room. Turner had been appointed to lead the statewide Civilian Oversight Commission 6 months earlier, a watchdog group with subpoena power, cameras in the courtroom, and connections that stretched to the DOJ. "You just assaulted a federal advisor," Celia added coldly. "Congratulations." Malloy stepped back, blinking hard now, weighing options that had already disappeared. His radio buzzed at his shoulder. "Unit 12, report. You need backup." He didn't answer. Backup was already arriving anyway. 2 cruisers rolling slow up the street. One officer stepped out, saw the phones, saw Denise bleeding, saw the sergeant standing over her, and his face changed instantly. His hand hovered near his holster, but not for Denise. For the man beside her. Denise cradled her son now, unbuckling him slowly, whispering softly through split lips. "It's okay, baby. It's okay." The child's cries softened, but his little hands clutched her blouse, smearing blood into the fabric. When the paramedics arrived, Malloy tried to step in front of them. She resisted. He said quickly, loud enough for the crowd. She got aggressive. The EMT, a black woman named Tanisha with a face like stone, didn't even respond. She looked at Denise, nodded once, and gently took her hand. "We've got you, ma'am." They helped her from the car, slowly, carefully. She winced, but didn't cry out. Even bleeding, even humiliated, Denise Turner held herself like a woman who had just remembered exactly who she was, and who had just decided she wasn't going to let them forget. The hospital lights were too bright. Leonard Turner stood in the emergency room hallway, jaw clenched, tie loosened, phone still hot from the last call he'd made, to the district attorney. "I want the footage secured," he said calmly. "I want Malloy off the street before midnight. And if anyone so much as tampers with that cruiser cam, I'll be filing obstruction charges before dawn." His voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Leonard wasn't the kind of man who had to yell. He was the kind of man who walked into a courtroom and made judges nervous. The ER door opened. "She's stable," the doctor said. "Minor concussion. Facial trauma. No fractures. We're keeping her overnight for observation." "Can I see her?" Leonard asked. The doctor nodded. He stepped inside, and for the first time in 20 years, Leonard Turner felt powerless. Denise sat up in bed, fur in her arm, gauze taped to her cheek. She gave a half-smile. "Hey, baby." He sat beside her, took her hand, pressed it to his lips. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should've." "No." Her voice was cracked but strong. "Don't apologize. You know what you gotta do now." His eyes met hers. "You sure?" Her answer was simple. "Make them pay." And just like that, the line between grief and fire was crossed. Leonard stood, pulled out his phone, and began to dial. Not a lawyer, not the police chief, but a name that didn't live in Selma. A name that lived in D.C. "Hey," he said when the call connected. "It's Turner. I need the Justice Department to send someone down here. Today." One of yours just declared open season in Selma. By sunrise, Selma wasn't just a city, it was a headline. The footage hit Twitter first. Just 27 seconds long, it showed the end of the encounter. Denise Turner, blood trailing down her chin, flinching backward as a white officer barked commands. The slap itself wasn't on video, but the aftermath, the blood, the cries, the sheer panic was enough. Within 2 hours, #JusticeForDenise was trending. Within 6, CNN had dispatched a crew. By noon, the mayor of Selma had issued a statement calling the incident deeply troubling and promising a thorough internal review. But none of it mattered. Not to Leonard Turner. Because Leonard wasn't waiting on reviews. He was building a war room. The Turners' modest ranch house on the north side of Selma became ground zero. Laptops covered the kitchen table. Legal pads were stacked high, photos and documents scattered like a prosecutor's dream. Denise's cousin Malika, a data analyst from Montgomery, had pulled every public record on Sergeant Brandon Malloy. It didn't take long to uncover the rot. 5 excessive force complaints in the last 8 years, she said, scrolling through a PDF. All dismissed by internal affairs. Leonard didn't look up. Patterns. Every one of the complainants was black, Malika said. 3 men, 2 women. Same language in each report. Resisted commands, non-compliant. Suspect became verbally aggressive. Leonard's jaw tightened. Same language he used with Denise. A second cousin, Jamal, a tech-savvy 20-something with a distrust of authority and a VPN for every device, chimed in. Check this out. Local Facebook group for Selma PD supporters. They've been scrubbing comments since last night. But I got screenshots. He turned his laptop. The comments were a digital Confederate flag rally. Maybe she should have stayed in her lane. You can't talk back to cops and expect a hug. They're playing the race card again. Leonard read them silently, then looked up. Give me a copy of that cruiser cam footage. Jamal raised an eyebrow. That's not public record. You have the login I gave you? Jamal grinned. Already in. Back at the Selma Police Department, chaos was spreading like oil on water. Officer Malloy had been temporarily reassigned, a bureaucratic euphemism for hiding a liability. He'd been told to stay off duty and keep quiet. But Malloy didn't do quiet well. Especially not when the narrative was slipping from his grasp. They're making me the villain, he snarled to his union rep, pacing his living room, beer in hand, face flushed. I was doing my damn job. You hit her, Brandon. She was disrespectful. Combative. These people don't respect authority, never have. These people. Malloy froze. His rep, a white woman in her 40s, stared him down. You mean black people? She asked. He scoffed. Don't twist my words. Don't hand me ones that are already knotted. He turned away, muttering, but the damage was done. Even among his own, the air was shifting. People were starting to ask the question he feared most. What if the video doesn't show what he claimed? Meanwhile, Denise remained in the hospital, a quiet storm behind tired eyes. The swelling had gone down, but the bruises had bloomed, deep and dark across her cheek. Her son clung to her arm every time a white coat entered the room. The nurses, many of them black women, brought extra blankets. One even braided her hair. You stood your ground, the nurse said softly. That's gonna matter. Denise managed a tired smile. I didn't want to. You didn't need to want to. You just had to do it. That night, Leonard held a press conference on the steps of the Selma courthouse. He wore a charcoal gray suit and a black tie. Denise's photo, taken just after the assault, was displayed on an easel beside him. Behind him stood lawyers, community leaders, clergy, and veterans of the civil rights movement. I am not here today as a federal appointee, Leonard began, his voice steady. I'm not here as an attorney. I'm here as a husband, a father, a black man in America who knows that when someone like my wife is beaten in broad daylight by someone in uniform, it is not an isolated incident. It is the echo of a system that has never fully valued our lives. He paused. I have filed a civil suit against Sergeant Brandon Malloy. I have also submitted formal requests to the Department of Justice to open a federal investigation into the Selma Police Department. But that is not enough. He leaned forward, voice sharpening. We have the footage. From the cruiser dash cam. We have the audio. We have the receipts. This isn't going to be buried. And it will not be forgotten. The crowd roared. A reporter called out, Mr. Turner, what do you hope to achieve? Leonard didn't blink. Justice, he said. And if not that, then consequence. Across town, Malloy sat in his truck watching the press conference stream on his phone. His hands were shaking. Not from fear. From disbelief. She wasn't supposed to matter, he whispered. He meant it. He had hit her because he assumed she was no one, just another face in another stop. Another black woman who would file a complaint, get a shrug, and disappear. But she didn't disappear. She became a megaphone. And now, the echoes were shaking the walls of the very institution that had always protected him. Selma had always been a city of ghosts. By the time the Department of Justice arrived, the air was thick with history and something else, tension sharp enough to snap bone. Federal agents in dark suits didn't walk so much as glide through the courthouse corridors, briefcases swinging like quiet verdicts. Leonard Turner greeted them not with relief, but with expectation. "Don't waste time," he said, shaking hands. "We both know it's bigger than a single slap." The lead agent, Carla Mendoza, nodded. She was sharp-eyed and soft-spoken, but there was steel in her spine. "We're treating this as a pattern of practice case," she confirmed. "Not just Malloy. The entire department's under review." "Good," Leonard said. "Then you'll want to start with the files they buried." He handed her a sealed folder. Inside, copies of internal memos, disciplinary reports, and body cam footage the public had never seen, some from Malloy, some from others. One report described a black teenager who was tossed after asking why he was being searched outside a gas station. No drugs, no weapon, just suspicion. "Where'd you get these?" Mendoza asked. Leonard didn't answer. He didn't have to. Sergeant Brandon Malloy hadn't left his house in 3 days. The curtains were drawn. His phone buzzed with messages from fellow officers, most reading like eulogies. "You good? They're coming hard, man. Keep your head down." But the real blow came not from the press or the protests. It came from the call he didn't expect. "Brandon." The voice on the phone was gravelly, cold. "You remember Lakewood High? 2004? He froze. The caller continued. "You should have kept your hands to yourself back then, too." The line went dead. Malloy's fingers shook as he scrolled through his Facebook messages. There it was, a photo of him, senior year, football uniform. And standing next to him, a black classmate, Jason Trenton. Jason had accused Malloy of assaulting him after a school fight. Back then, the story disappeared. Malloy's father was chief of police. Jason's parents couldn't afford a lawyer. The case was sealed. Forgotten. Until now. Now Jason was a civil rights investigator in Chicago. And he had gone public. "I didn't come forward for vengeance," Jason said during an interview with The Root. "I came forward because it's time people saw the whole picture." Brandon Malloy didn't become a violent cop. He's always been one. The article included court documents, affidavits from former classmates, and a letter Jason had written in 2004, never mailed, begging the school board to act. The headline read, "The slap was just the beginning. Malloy's violence has a past." Within hours, Selma erupted again. At City Hall, protesters gathered with signs that didn't ask. They demanded, "Fire Malloy. Unseal the records. Justice for Denise." Denise, still recovering, watched from her hospital room. Her phone buzzed with messages from strangers across the country. Survivors. Mothers. Daughters. One message read, "I stayed silent when it happened to me. You gave me the courage to speak." She turned to Leonard, who stood at the window, arms crossed. "You're shaking the whole damn system," she said softly. He turned. Not alone. That night, the mayor of Selma called a press conference. Flanked by city council members and the police chief, his face grim with political calculus, the mayor cleared his throat. "We have decided to place Sergeant Malloy on unpaid suspension pending the outcome of the federal investigation," he said. Gasps from the crowd. Someone shouted, "That's not enough." The mayor held up a hand. "We hear you. But we must let the process play out." It wasn't enough. But it was something. Then came the twist. Mendoza, the DOJ agent, stepped forward. "We have also obtained clearance to investigate sealed juvenile cases involving Sergeant Malloy," she announced. "Any pattern of abuse that began in youth will be considered in our broader civil rights review." Malloy's high school record was now federal evidence. Back in his dim living room, Malloy stared at the television screen, his own face staring back, blurred by protests, buried by accusations. He turned to his wife, who sat pale and tight-lipped on the couch. "I was just doing my job," he whispered. She didn't answer. Because it wasn't just about this time. It was about all the times he thought the badge gave him permission. All the times no one had said no. Until now. In Washington, D.C., Leonard Turner's phone rang just past midnight. He picked up on the first ring. "Turner." It was Mendoza. "We're pushing this higher." "How high?" "Attorney General high." Leonard exhaled slowly. "Good. By the way," Mendoza added, "your wife, she's become something of a national symbol." Leonard glanced toward the hospital bed, where Denise now slept peacefully, her hand resting on their son's. She was always that, he said. The country's just catching up. Selma's ghosts had found new voices, and they were no longer whispering. They were marching again. This time with cameras, with evidence, with names, and with fire. It was 91 days after the slap. Selma's skies were overcast, clouds hanging low like they too were holding their breath. The courthouse was quiet on the outside, but inside, the air pulsed with the weight of everything that had brought them here. Denise Turner sat in the front row, her bruises long faded, but her presence still a mark of defiance. Leonard sat beside her, fingers laced with hers. At the defendant's table, Sergeant Brandon Malloy no longer carried himself like a man in control. The uniform was gone, suspended permanently, pending criminal charges. His face was gaunt, the sharp arrogance eroded by weeks of national scrutiny, internal probes, and a mountain of testimonies that painted a picture not of a rogue officer, but of a man raised and protected by a system that never questioned his rage. The courtroom was full. Activists, journalists, survivors, and most visibly, 3 federal observers sent by the DOJ. Mendoza was among them, notebook in hand, her eyes fixed on the judge. The charges had escalated since the investigation began. Assault under color of law, civil rights violation, destruction of public trust. The defense tried to pivot. It was a moment of confusion, Malloy's attorney argued. A misunderstanding inflamed by media pressure and a rush to judgment. Leonard didn't even flinch. When it was the prosecution's turn, the room shifted. Denise's video was played, followed by body cam footage, dash cam audio, witness interviews, and testimony from Jason Trenton, the man Malloy assaulted back in high school. The prosecutor's closing words echoed against the marble walls. This is not about a slap. This is about the centuries behind it. The presumption of guilt. The assumption of power. The silence that always followed until now. The judge's verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all counts. Gasps. Cheers. A sob from the back row. Denise closed her eyes. Malloy said nothing as he was led from the courtroom. No apology. No glance toward the woman he had struck. Just the shuffle of feet and the clink of cuffs, real ones, this time. In the weeks that followed, the dominoes kept falling. The Selma police chief resigned under pressure. 3 officers were placed under separate investigations for prior misconduct uncovered during the DOJ review. The mayor announced the formation of a permanent civilian oversight board, this one with subpoena power and an independent counsel. Selma was changing, and the nation was watching. Denise appeared on 60 Minutes, not for spectacle, but for truth. I didn't ask to be the face of anything, she told the interviewer. But if what happened to me can force people to confront what's been allowed to fester in this country, then I'll keep showing up. I'll keep telling it. Because someone has to. Leonard was invited to testify before Congress. His words, measured, precise, and unflinching, became part of the national record. We are not asking for special treatment, he said. We are demanding equal protection. And the time for hesitation is over. On the 92nd day, Denise stood at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge, this time not as a marcher, but as a speaker. The crowd stretched down the street, thousands deep, a river of faces of every shade. She wore white, just like the women who had walked for justice generations ago. When she stepped to the microphone, the crowd hushed. 3 months ago, I was a woman in a car who got hit in the face by a man with a badge, she began. And the world watched. Not because it was rare, but because, for once, it was recorded. But let me tell you what else the world saw. It saw my community rise. It saw my husband stand. It saw strangers become soldiers for truth. And it saw a city built on struggle remember its purpose. She paused, her voice rising. We are not done. Because until justice doesn't depend on the camera angle, until our pain is believed without proof, until no child has to be taught how to survive a traffic stop, we are not done. Thunderous applause. Behind her, Leonard watched their son clap his little hands, wide-eyed and smiling. History doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it starts with silence. Sometimes, with blood. But sometimes, it starts with a woman who refuses to stay down. And in Selma, once again, that woman had a name. Denise Turner. And this time, the world said it out loud. And so, in a city where justice once marched across a bridge and was met with batons, another woman stood her ground, not with fists, but with truth. Denise Turner didn't just survive the slap. She turned it into a reckoning. Her silence became a voice. Her pain, a platform. Selma remembered her name. The system felt her power. and the nation had no choice but to watch. But now, it's your turn. What would you have done if it were your mother, your sister, your wife in that driver's seat? Do you believe justice was truly served, or just delayed again, like it always has been? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share this story if it moved you. And don't forget to like the video, it helps the truth travel faster. Because stories like Denise's aren't rare. They're just rarely believed. Until now, goodbye.